Okay, so let me make a claim. Death is only something that makes sense from the perspective of the samsaric mind, or you could say the subtle mind that's based on ideas of the past that are being held conceptually, symbolically, then projected into a future. And to relate it to what we were talking about last week, every part of that samsaric mind is glued in place with its various layers and loops forming the entirety of the personality through stuck emotions. Or when I say petrified intentions or fixed intentions, like in the book, the fixedness, the petrification rests on emotions being coagulated. If they were not coagulated, or let me say it differently, anything that we call an emotion is slowed down to the point of being frozen or almost frozen. Flow of love, joy, desire. Otherwise, you could call it eros, flowing freely through the central channel continuously. And the reason that this gets redirected and starts looping in instead of looping outwards, right? We have energy coming in and then it loops samsarically and binds the energy and keeps taking more energy, more information coming in and keeps it spinning in place. Is that while we developed, something came in and told us, not this way, not this. This is bad. Alternatively, this is good, right? But there's always some badness, goodness balance. It's the good. If there's a bad thing, there's a good thing. It's craving and aversion, push and pull. Can also take it a step back. This will just mention in a bookmark. Can also take it a step back into ignorance, in the sense that the core spiel of Tibetan Buddhism is as soon as awareness arises in a being, there can either be recognition or ignorance. That awareness that reflects awareness is a faculty that reflects what is, can either recognize what it's seeing, what it's reflecting as itself, or it can think that it's separate. If it recognizes it as itself, nothing is ultimately good or bad because it just is. It's just me. If it thinks it's separate, then it thinks some things are not it, some things are it, and then it starts like this, yes, no, yes, push, pull. But even from this point of ignorance, and this is more the standard psychological story, there is at least a certain level of flow, and then the other beings around us who are responsible for caring for us as we grow have their assumptions of good and bad, and they bake them into our system, and they all become these slants, redirects of the flow. Okay, in the context of death, if we get to the point when there's no longer any petrified um, emotion or fixed intention, and the flow continues happening naturally, contemplating death is no longer a thing because there's nothing left to die. That's not to say you can't get run over by a car, but contemplating it doesn't help because no longer are you being moved by samsaric assumptions. There's just the continuous flow of the universe moving through you and as you. And it's not to say that it can utilize the beautiful subtle mind capacities of projecting into the future. They come, they're energized, maybe they even stick around for a while, and then when they're done, they immediately dissolve. And they're also free to update much more dynamically. Then what happens is, because there's a flow of love, joy, desire, also known as compassion, the movement towards holding any mental construct in the subtle realm, right? The type that self-reflexively operates itself and takes in information and updates the model and goes towards something in the world, is compassion, versus an aversion from something that we're attached to, identifying as the bad thing or the thing that's not us. Which is completely equivalent to the continued contemplation of death, or the sense of being dying and being reborn every moment. Many Buddhists who've become completely enlightened and suddenly in the conception of the 10 fetters in the Pali Suttas that drop towards enlightenment, does craving for being and craving for non-being, which both drop completely. In essence, that's the equivalent of I want to be, I want to live, which is another projection into the future. I want to live tomorrow. Or craving for non-being, which is this sucks, I want it to stop. I want to stop existing. And it's the same. The thing that wants to stop existing is the samsara, is the samsaric loops. The thing that wants to continue existing is the samsaric loop. When those go away, there's something that any enlightened person you would ask would say, if I say that I'm alive, that I'm being, it's saying too much. If I say that I'm not being, it's also too much, because none of those are ultimately true. No is statement makes sense anymore in this regard. But of course, they're continuously happening. The place that they're continuously happening from is the place that transcends and includes the samsaric mind. And in this way, you could say they die and are reborn in every moment. Or that question just goes out the window. No more death. Of course, that's not to say that if they knew that they died in 2 weeks, they would stop the 5-year project they're on, right? They're not stupid. The information is there. And they would notify their close ones and make sure the will is updated. But there is zero clutching in this regard, in the sense that contemplating the death and coming to terms with it will lead to some samsaric type reorganization in their bodies and minds. How's that all land? Jen? Jen?
It lands well. The part my mind is trying to understand, or I'm trying to understand, is said love, joy, desire. I think love, joy, I'm like, okay, that makes sense. Desire, I'm curious about, because I think of it as not like a thing that goes away, or like craving or something. So yeah, could you say more about that one?
So let's consider the difference between desire and craving. Craving is desire that's bound up by a samsaric process that has inside of it assumptions baked into around what is not good or what is not you. So craving is desire co-opted samsarically. But without samsara, right, without karma, without coordinators working based on samsaric assumptions, you still move in the world, you still flow. And you could even say love, joy, desire is compassion.
And I was trying to understand that too, and can't quite. Is the desire Because if you want something that my it doesn't mean that you think it's better than what you don't want. It's just a movement.
Yeah, you can still think that it's better. You can still have the notion, you're reaching for the thing that in your mind is more aesthetically pleasing, is more beautiful, is more right in the world.
Mm. And it's compassion because it moves towards kind of what we think of what compassion wants, which is it's it's better for people
Yeah,
world.
even saying that is a little much, right? Like if you scratch your beard, you're not thinking this is better for the world. It's like,
Mm, mm. Oh, okay. It's much more moment to moment. It just moves in that direction. And it ends up on the bigger picture. Someone thinks, oh, it's doing things that are good for them and good for others.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
you could say that. Let me give you an example that makes it alive, a little more alive in your body. Think about some skill, something that's your field of expertise that when you do, you really feel energized, and alive, and like you do it with joy. Now, think about think about seeing a family member you love drowning in the bay behind you. And you don't have to jump into the frozen water. All you have to do to save them is to do that skill that you're really good at, that brings you joy. So you get to utilize the skills that you're best at that bring you joy towards doing something useful and beneficial, and maybe even saving lives of people you care about.
Hmm. Okay. That's helpful.
And more, that's what life becomes. It's when you lose attachments and all that comes through is just love, joy, desire. You can also call it devotion, which is in some way the other side of surrender, which is also something I want to touch on a little bit in the context of dying. There's no reason you would do anything besides what brings you joy in the devoted service to all beings, including yourself, aka compassion, love in action.
And it's the opposite side of surrender because you're surrendering the clinging to a self and instead devoting to well-being. All.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
We'll talk about that a little more if there's time, but that's the okay, Sophie, and then I want to start playing with it a little more experientially.
Yeah, I don't understand what do you mean by compassion? Because that's probably the reason why I'm not understanding it. I thought compassion was this feeling of love and understanding towards other, and then sometimes action comes from that. But I don't see joy, love, and desire always necessarily being compassion. So maybe I don't understand compassion.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. So there are multiple ways to relate to compassion, which you could say relate to the level of sophistication of the perspective, as it relates to how much you've let go of samsaric spinning. So if let's say last time we used the model of like level 0, 1, and 2 around at the beginning, you just manipulate the world to get your needs. Level 1 is you form internal relationships with ideal parents or whatever other types of internal coordinators to give yourself what you want, what you need, right? The emotional need that we spoke about last week. And then level 2 was you get it directly from source. Source is the thing that flows through you and as you, as love, joy, desire. So in the same way, level 0 of compassion is like I have to manipulate the world to get my needs. I've heard something about compassion. It's this thing where I do things that not only serve me but are also beneficial to other beings. They prevent harm, they reduce suffering. So if I ride that train, if I have this motif, I can be even more effective in getting what I want for myself. I'm manipulating the world in a nicer way than just hacking through other beings to get what I want. It's about doing it with compassion. The level one is I know that I'm in pain internally. There's pain and suffering, and part of it is I'm the relationship that I have with myself based on how I was related to by my caregivers. Something's missing, and I can start giving it to myself, and I also start seeing it in others. I see the pain in them. I don't just see the being as a concrete object to manipulate, right? I'm giving you compassion so you can give me. You actually see the pain in them. And the same maternal or paternal instinct also goes towards them. You want to take care of them. You see the goodness in that. You give yourself, you have a sense of value if you give them whatever it is that reduces harm or takes care of their pain, which is more the colloquial notion of compassion. Someone's hurting and I'm going towards that. The level two is I'm doing three. Level two is source movement from a perspective of non-separation is just responsive to whatever arises in the field, whether internal or external. And so we stop conceiving of a benefit to our identity with samsaric being. You could say it's a movement towards identifying multidimensional, meaning in multiple aspects of life, gradients between pain and pleasure, or what is harmful to beings versus what's beneficial to beings, and you naturally are drawn to go towards the benefit in every system, in every dimension of your life. In the exact same way that a moth is drawn to a flame. It's not that a moth has a sense of like, oh, here's the flame, here's a light source. Let me pilot towards it. The photons from the flame hit its receptors, which then determine which wing flies in what capacity until it orients directly towards the flame. So you stop conceiving at that point the life, using the moth analogy, the signals, the signals from reality are the photons that move through your entire being directly towards what needs care.
I understand it intellectually. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah.
cool.
And until that happens, it's hard to until you really start feeling that in your system. It's hard to. When people have Kundalini awakenings, essentially there's enough activation in the whole system that, excuse me, there's enough activation in the system, enough energy, enough warmth in a way that all of the coagulated emotions start rattling, start becoming liquefied, and start moving up the central channel. And that's when, well, people can go a little crazy because then also all of those petrified intentions come up and they mistake them with truth because of all the energy and so on. But when that process goes towards completion, that's when you can start, or at least you have a few moments of the channel being very open and free and not polluted by old ideas. That's when you start noticing it, just like start to move towards. And it doesn't even necessarily register as compassion at this point. Many people say, I just move about my day and I ride this joy train, and other people tell me, oh, you're so compassionate. I was like, oh yeah, I guess you could say that. Right? And again, like to bring it back to the simplest terms, if I'm scratching my beard, I'm not being compassionate. It's just like, oh, it's scratched. It's itchy. It's itchy in this being. And so
Do you find yourself in those states being of more service, or that concept doesn't even apply anymore?
you're always you could say you're always being of maximum service.
Isn't that compassionate in a way towards the coordinator who's like sensing the itch in a way and feeling discomfort from that?
If you truly have gone beyond parts and coordinators based in samsara, then you will feel the itch. You'll have like let's say an empathetic hit of the pain, but it won't cause suffering. There won't be the friction of, oh, what do I do about it? I gotta, or the sense of, oh, if I take care of that being, I'm gonna give myself points and refine my being and existence. That starts going away.
The whole after spiel, basically, like the whole post-processing after and pre-processing
Yeah.
before the
Yeah.
stretching.
Yeah. It's just this a dynamic responsivity. Yeah. Okay. So let's start playing with it some more. Let's see. So we have death. We have moving past samsaric spinning. We have emotions being liquefied and moved all the way through as love joy. There's even the usefulness in the perspective that all of those emotions stuck in us are already a form of love joy that generally helps remove the pressure on them, the meta pressure that not only is it petrified, it's bad that it's petrified. You see it all as a grand movement of love and joy that tends to mobilize the system towards being free and liquid in this way. I spoke about surrender and devotion. And there was one thing that I really wanted to start with. Let's see what it was. Okay, here's one first experiment. This is something. This is such a precious tool which you can really use at any time. We won't go into a meditation yet. It's more of an embodied exploration. Probably take a couple minutes. Let's see. So we start by considering that we have, let's say, 3 months to live. Today is June 23rd. You have until September 23rd. You've gone to a future telling person. They're like, a comet's gonna hit the Earth. Just your house. You're gonna die. No, nothing to do about it. If you try to run away, comet chases you and kills you. In 3 months, you die. So I want you to go very still. Let go of the imagination of dying. Let go of ideas of what it means. Let go of ideas about other people. Just come to terms here and now from a very still place. An idea of, I'm gonna die in 3 months. I only have 3 months. I only have 90 more days. And then the end of everything I've ever known. Maybe there's a thought, okay, but then I have a new life and then something else. And then awareness is like, no, you don't know. Everything you have known goes away. Now, as this happens, I want you to notice the types of thoughts that come up about your own existing projects in the world. Whatever movements will feel incomplete. The thought comes up, but I haven't climbed Mount Everest. But I haven't shipped my product. I haven't finished writing the book. What thoughts come up? If something's already come up and it's gone, it's not really present anymore, you can give it a little jump start, like bring it up to your imagination. What's the thing that's like, I gotta finish? And as you bring it up, see where in the body you feel a hit of sensation, or even something more like an emotion. And from this place of, I know I'm gonna die in 3 months, so I have 3 months to do it, I want you to see if you can fully feel the emotion underneath. And if it's a negative emotion, like a fear of not having completed the project, or an anger about not being allowed to do the thing, and while maintaining the stillness and the sense of end, I want you to consider and bring up the positive emotion that's identified with it. The joy that got you into the project to begin with. The love towards whoever is supposed to receive benefit from it. Maybe for the purpose of this movement of emotion, you might find that a better target is next week or next year. But what I want you to notice is that the more that you allow yourself to die in the moment, the more the body comes online and becomes available to be used as a medium for the emotion underlying the thought to move. Yep. Notice how the more you die, the more of your body becomes available to be inhabited in the sense of it being in awareness and you feeling the sensations in it. The more that the emotion you're in contact with can just spread and move to wherever it needs to go. At this point, it's also extremely helpful to take either a nice big breath to all of the body, or to breathe in a way that highlights the place where the emotion is in the body and any tension that might be there. In this context, the breath is an energizing factor. It helps liquidate, energize the emotion, allowing it to flow. And come back when you're ready. Feel free to stay in that space a little while longer if there's something mid-process. I'll do a couple more explorations building on that, but before, I want to hear how this was.
So in my body, exactly this thing happens, which I think is why I like the contemplation of death. It feels like there's a tension, there's a clenching, there's a fear first, and then you instructed this switch. Okay, now feel, I don't know exactly how you phrased it, but feeling the love behind it.
Mhm.
And it's the energy behind it really felt quite strong then. And all of a sudden this anxiety, this clenching, it was like it was the same feeling flowing more freely. All of a sudden was then just an energy and a complete aliveness.
Perfect. Did you feel that it could move more this way? That you could feel it, that you could like, squeeze the juice of the emotion? Linus, that's a question for you, but it's okay if you don't care to answer.
Oh, I thought you were talking to Sophie. I'm sorry. Yes, it did. Yes, exactly. It felt like I said the same feeling, but flowing more freely. The same thing, but flowing more freely. Yeah, and but then it could go all over and sort of, yeah, just felt like potential energy, like doing something, like life affirming, instead of this scaredness, hiding awayness, like um, clenching around it. Yeah.
Sophie?
Okay, so I actually had to drop the judgment of like, oh, I really don't get this death thing. But what happened to me was that I actually thought I was gonna like think about what you're saying, projects, or even think about family members, but I couldn't stop thinking about like this imaginary perfect dessert that I would just eat the whole time. And that was the only thought that I had. I couldn't think of anything else. I was like, oh, I'm only 3 weeks. I'll just lay on this couch and just like eat the dessert, you know, perpetually until death.
That's perfect. I don't know if you guys know, not exactly a Koan, but it's like a Zen story. Do you know what I'm referring to? I'm curious if you've heard of it in advance or you just came up with it yourself. Let me pull it out.
Oh no, I haven't. I had to drop the judgment that I was like, oh my God, is that the thing? Like you cannot think of anything else.
Okay, here it is. I have to read this for you. A man is chased across a field by a ferocious tiger. He flees until he reaches the edge of a cliff. With no escape, he grabs the root of a wild vine and swings himself down over the precipice. Looking up, he sees the tiger sniffing at him from above. Looking down, he sees another tiger waiting at the bottom to eat him. He is suspended in the air with only the vine to hold his weight. Suddenly, two mice, one white, one black, emerge from the side of the cliff and begin to gnaw away at the vine. The vine begins to fray, and the man knows it is only a matter of time before it snaps and he plunges to his death. Out of the corner of his eye, he notices a single wild strawberry growing on the cliff within arm's reach. He lets go of the vine with one hand, plucks the strawberry, and pops it in his mouth. Oh, how sweet it tasted.
That's how I felt. I was like, yeah. Okay. There was not much depth to my experience. I was just thinking of dessert.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyone else want to share?
Yeah, I was thinking about I sort of set my time horizon like I'm gone at the end of this call, and I was thinking how would I be like more playful and free and kind of like the phrase I thought of zero cost vulnerability. Like I'm not defending anyone or like 3 calls from now, make sure that I'm well-respected member of the group because I was polite and I respected the facilitation structure and all this stuff. Like, yeah,
Zero cost vulnerability. That's great.
yeah.
Zero cost vulnerability.
And
What is
it
what? No, go on, go on.
well, I was just gonna say it feels like ways that I've felt on psilocybin in the past where I'm just like very much myself and not like yeah, so self-conscious.
Yeah. So who is the cost to? Who's bearing the cost?
The ego structure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So before we go into the next one, let's circle everything we know again. So the entirety of the samsaric self is glued together by petrified emotion. Right? We all have a good sense of what it means at this point, I hope, right? Okay. Yeah, I see you nodding, I'm happy. These petrified emotions have all sorts of conditions required for them to move and free so that we can come into alignment with fundamental consciousness and enjoy just riding the waves of cosmic love, joy, desire. One thing that we've done, that we've played with, is with this sense of, well, I'm gonna die in a moment, I'm gonna die in a week, just to loosen a little bit. Another tool that we've used is rather than be with the more contractive type of story, we switched it to the flip side, to the other side of the coin, which is, okay, this was created from love, joy, desire. What is it love joyously desiring? Right? Which helps also relax the grasp a little more. So we have the intellectual framework. We have a little bit of letting go through this playing with this hack that gets us towards more spinning down and emptiness of the constructs. We played with the framing that changes the story around the emotion from something more fearful, aversive, contractive to something more energizing, more loving, more freely flowing. Okay, so we have the intellectual framework, we have the emptiness, we have the love, and the last component that I want to introduce is the sense of devotion. you can do just this and this, and even with this intellectual understanding, until the second coming of Jesus, and very likely it won't be enough. Because as long as you're doing this from a mind of, I don't want to suffer, I have suffering and I want it to complete, I'm in pain and I want all of my parts to stop being in pain, that's generally speaking coming from a part that's entertaining a priori assumptions of separation, assumptions of being a separate entity in the world, and a way that the energy is still being taken up and used for internal loopy processes. It can definitely take you some way, similar to the level 1 that we described before of having a healthy internal parent relationship. But to go all the way, what you want is to find what it is that you're devoted to in the world, so that the energy that comes in, and even as we're trapped in samsara, there's still source energy coming through all the time, right? Otherwise the samsaric loops won't exist. They wouldn't have energy to take and loop with. You want to cultivate this energy through something, through finding something, and I puke a little bit when I say this, but greater than you, in the form of something that you want to direct your energy towards, right? That's not just like this, I don't want to suffer. And of course, at the beginning, before you know much about, let's call it non-separation, you sort of fake it till you make it, which is a lot of what happens in the path. Of course, a lucky few have some Kundalini awakening, or they have some non-dual awakening, and naturally they feel the pull to go and be of service to something greater, to utilize the energy in a way that doesn't just loop internally. And occasionally, in rare moments, if there's space, if you're not caught up too deep in samsara, they'll have the beacon shining from time to time, and they can reorient, right, like the moth to the flame. But from the knowing of the wisdom of those traditions, you can ride the conviction you have in them and any experience that you've had into moving that energy outwards, caring for other people, going into a project that serves the world, taking care of your family, doing something that's greater than just a small unit of self that's separate and has those loopy samsaric assumptions. Now, what happens when that's the case is that the more you have, and I'll speak about this movement that I'm doing some more, but the more you have this alignment with the bigger mind versus the smaller minds, the more, when you do this and this, right, the emptiness and the reframing for love, the intention that comes in is not, oh, let's release the energy that's bound up inside of me so I have more energy for myself. The actual flow of the bigger mind, the bigger loop, right, the bigger spirals of existence, start flowing in such a way that also releases the pressure on those petrified emotions. You could say that when the top of the channel and the bottom of the channel is open, and it's not that these are the only points, but at least in my experience and to the best of my knowledge, I'm not so much an energy person. When this opens and the bottom opens, it's the most profound depressurization of the whole system. It's almost like opening the airlock on a spaceship, and like everything just immediately gets blown out into space because of the pressure differential. Similarly, I don't know how many of you, I'm sure at least some of you, I would bet that at least half of you know about the relationship between the boiling point of water and atmospheric pressure in general. So if you have a pot of water and you heat it up to a certain temperature, there starts being enough energy / not enough pressure to hold the water in liquid form. So it depending on the temperature, the more the temperature increases, the more of the water is going to start becoming gas. But at any temperature, if you have no pressure, it's not enough to keep the water in liquid form. So if you open up the airlock, immediately just. Similarly, if you're using this metaphor of emotions being pressurized, stuck forms of what would otherwise be a flow of love, joy, desire, reducing the pressure by the construct of the small self, by giving yourself, devoting yourself to something bigger than the small self, tends to start depressurizing the system, with these being the most profound valves. And this depressurization brings the liquefaction of the emotions. Right? So the petrified emotions, we can say, are like solids. And if we do the movements that we discussed, start becoming liquid. At some point, you could even say it becomes plasma. Let's put that aside. And the more that we do this, the more that we use these types of techniques, the Buddhist flavored ones, right, along death and emptiness, the more, maybe you could call it Western psychology based ones. They also exist in Buddhism, but just to make for some differentiation, along seeing the goodness, seeing the love under the fear, which also helps remove the pressure. And the more you open up the whole system to the bigger mind through acts and the intention of devotion, the more you relax the pressure, the more you just allow things to start boiling up into space naturally, without needing to think about the story that encapsulates the emotion in place, without the trauma and the pain and the what happened and the past and what it means and all of the layers of samsara that occur as a result of the petrified solid emotion dams on the flow, making for loops to then create downstream stories and meanings and identities and agendas and all that crap. So now we have a very complete paradigm for how to go through the entirety of the path. And before we go into the next exercise, I want to see that you're all with me on this. So tell me how this lands or what comments you may have. I think this was quite nice. I might take those last 5-10 minutes and post them on YouTube. Tell me if you have a resistance to your beautiful faces just going along for the ride as I'm giving my monologue. Cool. Okay.
It feels like it requires, because when I think about doing something for the greater good, or things outside of myself, there's a clinging that says, well, what about me? I'm not gonna get anything. I'm not gonna get relieving of suffering or whatnot. I think it feels like it needs to learn that it's not the same as self-abandonment or something. I'm wondering about that process.
Yeah.
Like that is better for it as well, but it doesn't take in the thoughts that well.
Yeah, no, this is you're hitting something important. This relates in a way to the Kud exploration that we never fully brought in all the way home. We did a little bit like 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago when we last spoke about this. Generally speaking, when your devotion is in alignment, meaning your parts are in an architecture are in a state of coherence, such that the thing that you're devoted to also empowers them, you don't have a sense of abandonment. You're not sacrificing yourself for the greater good. You're offering yourself as an act of devotion to something greater than yourself. And that is something that outside of any doctrine of liberation or going towards anything has always felt good for humans across all of time. Even if, as you start doing this, you have a sense of, oh, I'm going to be devoted to this goal, to curing cancer, to taking care of the weak. Initially it will still have, and it will feel good for me, and it will make my identity more glorious, and so on. And what happens naturally is as you go more and more towards, let's say, when you go forward on this path of devotion, you start naturally seeing where the personality, the subtle personality, and all of the parts spending so much energy on reification starts adding useless friction.
Yeah, I think the friction is what causes the grief, like because these goals were tied to an identity, and so it can fail, and that means something about itself. Now it also doesn't want to go towards them. It's stuck.
Yeah, there is, or at least can be, grief on the way. There's also a lot of joy on the way. It's like, think about learning how to ride a bike. In the beginning, you have training wheels, and they bring you safety. And maybe, your dad bought you training wheels that have nice color. And when you think about your bike, right, you have those nice light blue training wheels. And at one point, one day, you're riding it with your friends, and you're noticing that everyone's riding much faster and with more agility. And you naturally understand that the training wheels are holding you back. And so you take them off and you think about all the joy that have given you, all the stability, all the safety, the way that you would never have been able to develop the skills of riding a bicycle without the training wheels. And you can shed a tear as you take one off, and then you can have a giant smile as you take the other off. And then you ride the bicycle and you ride free without the limitation. What I'm trying to say is it's never something that feels like you have to cut off a limb in some, with like a saw without anesthesia. It's not. Okay, I really have to transcend now. I really have to be enlightened. So there are traditions that would have you do that. It's certainly some psychedelics. Sometimes it could feel this way. And sometimes the greatest act of self-love and transcending limitations does feel, as you go towards it, like you're going to rip your throat out. But when you're actually doing the thing, if it's in alignment, if it's not an act of self-hate, there is the goodness there to be with, and the type of, let's say, sweet flow and nourishment from source that make it feel good, that makes it known as a good move as it happens. I'll say one last thing, which is when it happens, even as the world confronts you with it, or I'll say I had something happen with my partner a couple of weeks ago. It was so stunning to my identity. I was like, okay, I have to drop everything for a couple of days and just see what is this limitation and what in me needs to die. Like, I truly use those words, so that this does not cause so much disruption and friction. And it was this exactly the type of process that we're talking about now, with all of its components. What needs to die? What needs to be framed positively? What is the thing that me being will bring joy and happiness to me and to my partner and to the whole system that we exist in? What is the greater thing that I'm giving myself to, as the thing that's like an eggshell that I'm just growing up against? What is it, and how do I break through it and become bigger? So let's all die real quick again to set the stage for the meditation. And you can set your time of death using your own intelligence, using your own metacognition, so that it gives you time to give yourself to the thing that you're devoted to. Maybe it's an entire lifetime. So whether it is in a week or in 70 years, everything you know is going away. All of the achievements, all of the points on the screen, all of your wealth, all of your relationships, all of the spiritual prowess that you've cultivated. Everything going down the drain. Nothing more to look forward to, nothing more to worry about. Nowhere to go, no one to be. I don't know about you, but I have a smile come up on my face just thinking about it. And for now, let go of the devotion as well. Everything goes away. And notice what that feels like in your body. But don't just die conceptually, don't just die mentally. Let your whole body come into contact with death, with cessation. And take a couple of big breaths here to the entire body to help any tension along, anything that can just clear out all of the debris of life. If you want, you can take another one and make a big sigh as you exhale. It's like, it's over. And now slowly start bringing to mind the object of your devotion. Whether it's a person or a goal in the world or some state you want people to be in. What does it mean to be devoted to this person, to this goal? How will you recruit all of yourselves to bring yourself towards this task, towards this way of being. And as you're bringing this to mind, I also want you to notice the entirety of your body and the entirety of the space of awareness. See if you can bring to mind the devotion and your devotionality into a space that's bigger than the way that you habitually think. It's almost like thinking about it, bringing its energy, bringing its essence to outside of your body. Let it fully pervade the entirety of the space. And even outside of the space. Outside of any boundary of awareness. From that expanded perspective, and still with the intention of devotion held in the background, place 70% of your attention on the body, on any emotion related to it. Whether it's a fear, maybe about not being able to perform, maybe some anxiety around showing up in this way in your life, in your community. Whether it's anger about all the things that have not allowed you to be this way. Whether it's just the joy and happiness about showing up this way, about fulfilling the devotionality. And let the emotion fill up the entire space. Let it go where it needs to go. To whatever degree is possible for you, don't pretend you know the path for the emotion to flow. What you want to do is relax into your body, relax into the space. Keep around 30% of your conscious energy, of your attention on the devotion and devotionality. And let the emotion go where it wants to go. Beautiful. From time to time, take a nice big breath, the entire body, creating space, letting any tension that can just flow out by being touched. Relax this way. And as needed, you can play with a more localized breath, or directing the energy of the breath towards where the emotion is bound to energize it some more. As you're doing this, you may notice other tensions in the body, other stuck emotions, and they might spit out stories that are not even directly related to the devotionality. But you use the exact same tools, the exact same process to liquefy, to be the service that allows them to move as well. All of these emotions, all of those tensions are, from this perspective, just slowed down versions of flows of love, joy, desire coming up straight from source. And the more we see them as such, the more we can help them return to their fullest glory. If you notice yourself pushing against tensions, trying to direct flows, having ideas about how things should be, just notice that that's what you're doing and relax back into the bigger space. Return again and again to the simplicity of just being a loving space or whatever process is happening. From here, you can start playing with a mastery of this process, using all of the tools that we've learned. And so if the body feels very tense, if you notice the mind going into the future, into worry, then just die. Just surrender. Surrender all of your identities and agendas and plans. And free up the related spaces in the body. the emotion feels too hard, too contracting, too agitating, see if you can begin by first finding its more positive flip side. If it's fear, what is the thing that you love? If it's agitation, what's the thing you care for? And in the simplest terms, what you worry about is what you're devoted to. And if at any point you forget why you're doing this, if at any point you want to really energize the process, bring forward to mind the greater thing you're devoted to. Hold it front and center, right in front of your eyes. And when you have the ingredients right again, just relax into being the loving space. Allow things to unfold in their time. So we're going to take just a couple more minutes. Find one of those moves that you think will most contribute to the meditation right now. Apply it and then return to being the loving space. And I want you to notice how just the movement of sensation, just the movement of emotion, any emotion, creates pleasure in your body. Even if it's not related to any condition, anything you were achieving in the world, any type of sensory stimulation, just the movement of sensation is pleasurable. Just being the space that allows sensation to flow is blissful. Even if it's just 2% more blissful than the baseline. And so before we end, I want you to take that signature of the bliss of being the loving space, or the pleasure of sensations moving. Just to keep in mind and entrain the system on a direct reward of being this way. often when I do this type of practice, it feels like the flows scratch 1,000-year-old itch in my bones, in the center of my brain, that otherwise I would never be able to reach. And often it's much more satisfying than anything that I could achieve by moving around objects in the world. So bring this exploration to a close. Getting quite late, but I want to know of any last burning shares you might have, any reports you want to throw into the space.
I really loved your addendum about the anxiety of not living up to the devotion in a way. Because that's immediately the sensation that hit when I found my devotion direction, in a way, target. And you said it right at the moment where I was feeling it, and I was, I'm glad he brought it up. I was just very satisfied. Yeah. Thank you.
Seems we all had a nice ride today. But remember all of those tools, remember the signatures. Someone asked last time at the beginning what the fastest way to enlightenment is. This is a good path. This is a good holistic path. All right. Thanks for bringing death into this, becoming the seed of this conversation. Really worked beautifully. I invite you to continue doing that. Like, put in the chat what you're interested in, or like bring the thing that's really alive. The thing that's alive, and especially if it's in more than one of you, is the thing that often has the easiest time to bloom into sort of thing that happened today. All right. See you all next week.